So now that we have set some of the historical and geopolitical context, we can apply this to what's going on now, particularly in Kashmir, this area up here in the north, kind of that hat of India that we identified and labeled in our very first section. And this is a complicated area. The lines here were drawn during partition. We have people who are Muslim who would like to be part of Pakistan. We have people who are Hindu who would like to be part of India. There are Buddhists. There are some other people here as well. There are Sikhs. This is a very culturally diverse, very complex area. And all of those conflicting identities only make the geopolitical situation more complicated and more difficult. I have uploaded some articles and some videos for you as well. We're going to do a quick overview here. You may hear this area being called Jammu and Kashmir. That is another kind of more official name for this area. But when we're talking about Kashmir, we're also talking about the parts that not just belong to India or that are administered by India, but also the parts that are administered by Pakistan. We're kind of using a collective term. It's difficult to kind of define all the parts here. But we have an area that is administered by India. We have an area that is administered by Pakistan. And then there is a piece here that is held by China, that is claimed by India. India refuses to admit or concede that this land is controlled by China. There was actually a small border conflict here earlier in the summer over this area. There were actually some people who got fired upon. There were shots fired. There were some people who got beaten. It looked like the two countries might end up going to war. Luckily, that did not happen. There's also a piece, just to make things more complicated, that was given to China by Pakistan, and India refuses to recognize that. Okay, so we've got a lot of different pieces here. And understanding partition and the resentment that that created, the fact that these lines were drawn because of the geography of religion, that is also important to understand this geopolitical situation right now. Okay? So this is what this area looks like. Isn't that absolutely gorgeous? We are in the foothills and getting up into higher elevations of the Himalayas. This is an area where there are a lot of sheep that are raised. There's a lot of people who are shepherds. The fabric cashmere, cashmere, right? It actually that name came from this region. So this is a region that is known for its high quality wool. And it is just an incredibly beautiful place. There are these mountain lakes and absolutely gorgeous areas. A lot of people during British colonization would come up here at the higher elevations where it would be cooler during the summer, for example. Okay? So this is a incredibly beautiful area with a lot of history, a lot of really important culture. Unfortunately, an awful lot of it looks like this today. There are armed fences, there are armed guards. This is truly one of the most dangerous places on the planet because there is so much conflict and so much tension in this area. And a lot of it, again, goes back to the tensions from partition, all of that conflict, the fact that India and Pakistan have had a number of armed conflicts over the last 70 years, including some times when things got pretty tense. And things got particularly tense because both of them are nuclear powers. Both of them have nuclear weapons. And so there's a lot of concern about keeping things at a low temperature, at making sure that this conflict does not explode, because the consequences, not just for this region, but for the entire world, could be very dire. So let's look a little bit more about the borders and about the situation here, how we got these borders, how we got this complex mess. And it goes back to the period of partition and the period during British control. At the time that the British were still in control, this area that we're calling Kashmir was controlled by a Hindu Maharaja. Maharaja is like a prince or a king. And so the man who was in charge and the people who were the elite, who held all the wealth, they were Hindu. But the majority of the population, his subjects, were actually Muslim. And so from the beginning, there was this religious difference and conflict here. And when partition started to happen, when it was clear that the area was going to be gaining independence, what this man actually wanted was to become his own independent country. Didn't want to actually be part of Pakistan or India. And so he tried playing the two countries off of each other to get the best deal that he could. The majority of his people wanted to be part of Pakistan. There were Hindu people here as well, and they wanted to be part of India. He really just wanted to have independence and be completely separate. That wasn't going to happen. And there was a lot of conflict. There were people from both sides who ended up coming and causing problems and conflict. And he decided that overall, the best bet was to become part of India. Okay. And so he decided that his territory was going to join India at partition, that they were going to be part of the secular state of India, not the country of Pakistan, where the borders were drawn by religion. There were, however, some special rules and special concessions, and these were actually written into the Indian constitution from the very beginning of the country. And these special rules and provisions are called Article 370. Okay, so this is Article 370 of the Indian Constitution. And from the very beginning, the people of Kashmir were granted some autonomy with their own laws and had their own constitution. So there were different laws here than the rest of India. They also were given the right to make their own rules relating to permanent residency and the ownership of property. And these rules were there to specifically bar Indians from other states from coming in and buying up the property and settling there and taking control. Okay. So from the very, very beginning, Kashmir has had special status and special rules about its own sovereignty that did not apply to the rest of India. And that rule, then, these ideas have been about protecting this separate status and identity from the very beginning. And from the very beginning, Hindu nationalists, people who wanted this entire region to be Hindu, and I'm talking about both Pakistan and Bangladesh as well, they wanted this entire region to be Hindu and to expel all of the Muslims. And from the very beginning, these Hindu nationalists wanted to eliminate this special status and to control this area, to take away these special rights, and to basically expel this Muslim population. Okay? So that is the geopolitical situation. This is an area that had some of its own special rules, and this has caused conflict from the very beginning. Then, in the last year, a little bit more, there have been some big changes. There have always been conflicts, there's always been problems here. But in August of 2019, the Indian government, under Prime Minister Modi, who is supported by a lot of very hardline conservative Hindus, revoked Article 370 with no warning. They just decided, we're done. It's over. You don't get these special rules anymore, and we're in charge now. We are completely in charge. You don't get all of this special status, and we're going to do what we want. So this was a shocking turn of events. There was a lot of concern internationally, but they also did things like move troops in, even more troops, and they cut off all internet and cell phone service. So they completely shut this part of the country down. They jailed a whole bunch of people with no charges. And people just disappeared. Businesses were closed. Schools were closed. The country, this section of the country was basically shut off from the outside world and completely paralyzed. And there have been charges of a lot of human rights abuses and a lot of injustice going on in the last year. So they isolated these people. Life and businesses were disrupted. People were, like I said, disappeared. And a lot of the local leaders were jailed with no cause and no charge. This kind of chaos has only been made worse since the pandemic started. And only now is Kashmir beginning to emerge out of this lockdown. And life continues to be very uncertain. The economy is suffering very, very deeply because things have not been able to move in and out. People have been forced out of their jobs. People are not allowed out of their homes in some cases. And so the poverty has gone up, the chaos has gone up, and there is a lot of suffering and injustice going on. And unfortunately, these decisions on the part of the government have led to some really serious implications for the people of Kashmir. Okay? I have put some articles about this so that you can learn more about it down below. Um, and making this even more complicated, on top of the past, on top of this lockdown and crushing of the economy, there's also the added dispute of China being involved. And China and Pakistan have been creating closer ties, which of course does not excite India at all. And so that is only adding to tensions. And as I said, we almost got into a shooting war a few months ago. So this is definitely an area where geography of religion, geography of colonialism, geography of borders, all of these things help us understand a still evolving geopolitical situation and help us understand the current events. There's one more bit that I would like to highlight, and actually, there's two more bits. One is about the borders between India and Bangladesh. I have a kind of a silly video from Mapmen, who we've watched before, about the world's most complex borders and the way that it disrupted and caused chaos. But following in on Kashmir here, this is a display at the border between India and Pakistan. And this is a display that goes on every day during the flag lowering ceremony at the border. And this is what is called a proxy or a proxy war. A proxy is something that stands in or acts for something else, for another. And this flag lowering ceremony, where both sides put on a very aggressive kind of dance, is a way to release tension in this area and not have armed conflict, but still express the tension and the identity and the conflict in a more peaceful way. So I have uploaded a couple videos of that, and I hope you find that interesting as well. All right, that is the end of geopolitics.